It is the rainiest day that we have had in a while. This morning so far, all it's done is rained. I think it's just due to literally not stop raining all day. But I am very happy about it because all I plan on doing today is reading. And I feel like when I wake up and it's rainy outside and I already know that I want to read that day, I just absolutely love it. There's something so cozy about it. I actually wrote down the other day the top 5 mornings as a reader that I really enjoy. I've been seeing on TikTok people writing their top 5 mornings, and it got me thinking about a reader because I know that one of them, in fact, let me find it. Okay, yeah, so one of them is a rainy Sunday morning with no plans, or a rainy weekend morning, I guess, with no plans, which is what I'm experiencing today. I'll read them all actually. The first morning in spring where the weather is warm enough to read in the garden. I really enjoy, I enjoy reading anyway, but I enjoy that first morning when you can read in the garden. It feels so lovely. It gets me really excited for spring reading and summer reading. I love that morning. Waking up early to finish your new favourite book. I love that when you know you've only got a couple of chapters left and you save it for the morning. It doesn't happen that often because I feel like if I'm near the end of a book, I'll likely just stay up and read it, especially if it's one that I'm just absolutely loving. But very occasionally I'll go to sleep and wake up in the morning and finish those last couple of chapters, and I always really enjoy that. The first slow morning on a holiday with a cup of tea and your new summer read. So nice, I love that. And the 5th one is a morning spent at the bookshop. I feel like I am definitely the kind of person that could just spend literally a whole morning in a bookshop. I absolutely love being in a bookshop and just taking my time going through all the books that are there, and there's something so lovely. I also really like when a bookshop has a cafe, and so you can, whatever book you might have just picked up, you can sit in the cafe and read it for an hour. I just love when I've got the time to go to a bookshop and spend my morning doing that. So I need to maybe organise that sometime soon because I really enjoy it. I felt like that list could have gone on forever because essentially it's basically any morning where I've got the chance to read. So there's so many different variations of that. But I'd love to know what your favourite mornings are as a reader. And seeing as today is the rainy weekend morning, I am so excited to spend the day reading. I'm actually going to start reading The Villa by Rachel Hawkins, which is a book that's been on my July TBR, and I've really been looking forward to reading it. The book is based on 2 friends who go to a villa. I believe it's an Italian villa. They want to spend their summer holiday there. They're both writers, so they're thinking maybe they can spend some time writing there. It turns out that this is a villa where a murder happened in the 70s, and it was a rock star who was murdered. And I believe the story kind of starts to uncover what happened then. And it just sounds really up my street. I think also with it being a very rainy summer morning here, a summer thriller feels like the perfect thing to be reading today. So I'm really looking forward to it. It's funny actually, I had in my notes for this week that I was going to do a summer read, which is also what I had in my notes for a previous video, and then I woke up and the weather was like this. We have had really lovely weather recently, but it never seems to be a day where I'm filming. So I will be filming a summer read with me at some point. I'm saving a couple of books for that, but a summer thriller whilst it's raining will be the perfect read for me today. And I'm actually really looking forward to a nice cozy day with a good book. I have just finished chapter 3, so I've read the first couple of chapters of the book, and so far I'm really interested in the plot. We have just followed the 2 friends who are called Emily and Chess to the villa, so they've now arrived in the villa. I'm glad with how quickly they have got to the villa. I feel like now we're about to really delve into the story, and it's quite nice that that's happened pretty early on in the storyline. At the moment we're looking at things from Emily's perspective. I don't know if that'll be the case throughout the whole story, but that's where we're at now. I'm really curious about Chess and what her intentions are. I'm interested in the dynamic between Emily and Chess. I feel like like they have a bit of an interesting friendship. One minute they're quite close in a way because they've got a lot of history as friends, but then sometimes there's a bit of an undertone to how Emily talks about chess that makes me think, are they really that close? Is there something more going on or a bit more history? So I'm really interested in that whole dynamic and where that's going to go. And I also am really interested to see whether the modern day timeline links to the 70s at all. With some other thrillers that I've read where you kind of have two timelines, I feel like we have found out along the way that there's maybe been a link there between the two. So I'm really wondering whether that's going to be the case with this one and whether the timelines are going to cross over at all. Might not, but I'm interested to see whether that happens. So far so good. I'm liking the pacing. I am liking the characters so far, really interested in the dynamics between Emily and Chess in particular. So far so good. Just popped downstairs because I'm about to make another cup of tea, but I thought I'd give you a book update whilst I'm here. So I've just finished chapter 6, about to start chapter 7, and one thing that I really wanted to say at this point is that I'm absolutely loving how many different elements there are in the storytelling. So not only are there two perspectives in terms of looking at Emily in modern day and then flashing back in time to look at what was going on in the 70s, there's also things like news clippings or podcast transcripts and music lyrics. Different elements are being added in along the way to tell this story, and I love that. I feel like it's keeping me really hooked when we're switching up the writing style a little bit. I really just enjoyed reading that transcription of the podcast. That was just a really interesting way to read. I like that. I feel like it's keeping me on my toes and I'm really enjoying those different elements. I find it really engaging when a book does that, and this one's doing that quite a bit at the moment, which I'm really enjoying. Again, so far so good. Really enjoying the way this book is written so far. And before I carry on reading it, it is time for another cup of tea. I decided to pop into the summer house to read a little bit more, and I feel so cozy in here because it's raining outside and I can hear the rain on the roof, which you actually might be able to hear now, I'm not sure, but it is so relaxing. I'm really enjoying reading in here. It feels really cozy. And I've just finished chapter 12, and a pretty big moment has just happened in the modern day timeline that I didn't really see coming, but I was suspicious of the character that the reveal and the twist happened to do with. I'm trying not to give any spoilers, and I'm realising that didn't make any sense. But the character that the twist related to, that's the better way to say it, was somebody I wasn't sure how I felt about. It doesn't surprise me, but I didn't really see the twist coming in terms of what exactly it was, so that was really interesting to read. And just generally, I feel like the characters in this book are so engaging. I'm really enjoying reading their storylines. And one thing I'm really enjoying in terms of the characters actually is how the 70s timeline and modern day timeline kind of have a few connections. They don't necessarily have direct connections at this point. The angle that we're looking at the 70s storyline is between two sisters. They are two sisters who became very famous after that summer in the 70s in the villa. So we're kind of focusing in on them and their viewpoint in the 70s at the moment. And then obviously in modern day, like I've mentioned, we've got Emily and Chess. And I feel like the fact that it's two people who are really close to one another and they seem to have a little bit of a similar dynamic, I'm finding that really interesting, that those dynamics are kind of mirroring each other. And yeah, the characters are just really engaging. I'm finding them fascinating. I'm finding their relationships with each other really interesting, and I'm just so keen to learn more about their storyline, which I feel like halfway, or maybe just a bit over halfway actually, through this book is a good place to be with the characters. I also feel like we're at a point with the characters where we really are figuring out who they are, and like I said, the end of chapter 12 was really good, so I'm really keen to get back to reading and see what happens after the twist that we've just had. And I think I might actually stay in here and read a little bit actually. It's quite a bit later on in the afternoon now. I've just spent so much time reading today, which has been so lovely. I will either see you later on this evening or maybe tomorrow. Who knows? It is the next day now. It's an equally as rainy one, and when I was reading last night I decided that I would give myself another one of my favourite mornings as a reader that I mentioned and wait to read the last chapter or two in the morning the next day. So I've been really excited to get back to my book this morning. I have one chapter and the epilogue left to read, having just looked quickly on the contents bit of the Kindle. And we've had quite a few twists. There's been one twist, which obviously I won't say what it is in case you haven't read it, but I'm really not sure how I feel about it, and I'm a little bit confused by it. I might actually have to reread it and just make sure I've understood what's happened right, because yeah, I'm a little bit confused about it and I'm not sure how I feel about it. Maybe when I read the rest of the book it'll all become a little bit more clear and I'll understand that twist a little bit more. One thing I also really wanted to say about this book is that I'm really enjoying, when we're flicking back to the 70s, the imagery that is giving me, and the fact that a few of them were famous at that time and famous afterwards, and it's kind of got that imagery of the music scene of the time going on as a bit of a backdrop, with the person who was murdered there being a famous rock star of the time. There's just some interesting imagery that I am really enjoying being the backdrop, and also the fact that we are in a villa. It's just the setting and the time, particularly of course when we flash back in time, like I mentioned, to the 70s. I feel like I'd like to read more books set in that time. I think I love 70s music. I think the 70s fashion is really cool. So I feel like that's what I'm imagining as I'm reading, and I'm really enjoying that. Obviously there's a lot of other elements of the story going on with it being a thriller, but just that context alone is something that I am enjoying, being the context. So yeah, I'm really keen to read more and see how this story ends. I feel like I'm not sure whether there's more twists to come or what's going to happen. Like I said, I'm going to reread that chapter and figure out how I feel, and then I'll be back. Just finished The Villa by Rachel Hawkins. I really need to have a minute to dissect what I think about it, because as I was reading it the majority of yesterday, I would say to about 80% of the way through, probably until the last update that I gave yesterday, I was really enjoying the plot points and really interested in where it was going, but I'm still not entirely sure how I feel about the last twist or two that happened, and I feel like I need to figure out how I feel about that. So what I'm gonna do is get my reading journal out, write my Goodreads review, and then I'll come back with my full thoughts about this one. Okay, I've had a real think about how I feel about this one, and I feel like I'm now ready to share my full review. So with The Villa, there were so many things that I really enjoyed about it. I loved the characters. I found them so interesting and so engaging. I think that was something that I mentioned yesterday. I was just fascinated by everybody's intentions. I felt like the relationships between all of our characters were really well written. And so it just, wow, the rain has just started to absolutely pour. I can't believe the rain over the past couple of days. It really is perfect for a cozy weekend read. read, but wow, I just started to hear it as I was talking there. Anyway, I feel like the characters were just so well written, and it really made the plot really engaging when you weren't sure what everybody's intentions were. I was really interested not only with the dynamics, so more the characters as a group, like in the 70s as a group, and as a bit of a duo in modern day. I was not only really interested in those group dynamics, but I was really interested in each of the characters as individuals. And I think that makes for a really good book where you're not only interested in certain characters, you kind of want to know what's happening with all of them. I also loved elements of the structure. I loved how many different elements, whether it was podcast transcriptions or news clippings, or there was even an invitation in there, whatever it might have been, there were so many different elements, and so I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the structure of kind of the dual timeline, and then I also really enjoyed those different writing elements that were added into that structure. The one thing that I'm not entirely sure about is the ending of this book, and I do think it's one that I will need to reread at some point, because I just think I'm a little bit confused about how I feel about it still, even having written my review. I feel like I mentioned this earlier, but to about 80% of the book I was really loving the direction and where it was all going, and then there was a moment where I was a little bit confused, and I'd be really interested if you've read this book as well, if you felt the same, or maybe you really liked the way it ended. I'd just love to know your thoughts on the ending of it, because I'm just confused about how I feel about the ending. Another thing that I loved that I forgot to mention is the way the storylines, whilst being different, had a lot of similarities, and those similarities were really interesting ones. Overall, I gave this book 3.5 stars. I feel like I maybe would have given it 4.5. Like I said, I'm just not entirely sure how I feel about the ending of it. But if you are looking for a summer thriller that's a really easy read and quite a page turner, and there are some really good characters in there, I would still really recommend it. I feel like it'd be a good holiday read. So I think that is everything for today's video. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been so lovely to read with you. I really love bringing you along with me whilst I read some of the books that I'm reading. I will also, when the weather is nicer, definitely be filming a summer read with me where I am in the garden reading some summer books that are all basically here. One Golden Summer is one of them that I'm really excited to read, and there's a couple of others, whether they're on my Kindle or on my bookshelf somewhere, that I'm really looking forward to reading when the sunny weather returns. But for now, more cozy reading ahead, I think, this week, which I'm really looking forward to. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me. It's been so lovely to have you here. Let me know in the comments what you're reading at the moment, any book recommendations that you have. I'm always so keen to hear book recommendations, so do let me know. And thank you so much again for watching. I will see you next week with a new video. Bye!